Welcome to the podcast that puts a finger on the pulse of medicine and technology. On this show, you'll hear from investors, industry executives, and healthcare providers on the science and business of medicine. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and this is the State of MedTech. And we are on. Hey, everybody, this is Omar Khateeb, your head of state and host of the State of MedTech. I'm joined by a very dear friend. And of course, I always introduce that way because a lot of people that I bring on, I consider dear friends, people I've known for a while. But this guy I've known for quite a long time. And that's Dr. Chester Donnally III. I call him Chet, though, because Chet and I went to medical school together. And not only did we go to medical school together, I used to whoop his ass on a weekly basis in flag football. That's right. That's true. That is true.
Where Omar beat me on the field, I beat him in the classroom. So
I will admit. I mean, it should tell you a lot because I ended up dropping out, and then he ended up becoming a spine surgeon. So that is absolutely true.
Well, Omar, whenever I see a Baby Gap Under Armour shirt, I always think of you and you streaking down the field to catch those touchdowns.
What a great way to kick this thing off. This is going to be a lot of fun. Wow. Yeah. And what's funny is you'll recognize, Chet, some of the books behind me. So I got some of the classics, man. I got Robbins' Pathology. I got Harrison's. I got Schwartz's Surgery. Robbins, man. That's a classic. That's such a good
man.
book.
Probably not too many
it's a good book.
Those look pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I want to invite, Dr. Donnally, which I can't even say that. We're just gonna roll with Chet, But Chet, so Chet is, in my humble opinion, and I've been in this industry for almost 10 years now, and come across a variety of surgeons. I started my career in spine surgery. Chet is definitely the rising star in the world of spine surgery. I think he has a great big vision, not only for technology in spine surgery, but more specifically how surgeons fit within this digital ecosystem. We've had the advent of Web 3.0 and 4.0 with the metaverse coming out. And I think Chet is somebody who is far ahead of his time right now. And so I wanted to have him on to kind of talk about all these things, but more specifically, and again, I can tell you right now, it'll be a repeat guest. What is the state of spine surgery? And then what does the future look like? Because the other day, he and I were catching up and he had some pretty provocative, edgy opinions about that. And I was like, dude, why are we talking about this on a phone call? Why don't you just come on the show?
True, man. Okay, well, of course.
So, Chet, I was going to say, before we get into it, for the audience who's just meeting you right now, can you give us a quick, 1 minute high level on who you are, where you from, where'd you train?
So, very Dallas local. I went to, born in a Dallas hospital here. I live in Dallas now. Went to high school and college here at SMU. Used to be very good at football back in the 80s. For those that don't know, haven't been any relevance necessarily since then. Afterwards, went to med school with you at Texas Tech, then to Miami for orthopedic training, and then spine surgery at Rothman. And now I'm back in Dallas, been practicing for a little bit. And I got a 4-person spine group here in Dallas, Addison, Plano, Frisco, and as far north as Dallas keeps expanding. So my training, just like everyone else for the most part, is a lot of degenerative spine. And in that, I do a lot of deformity also, a lot of cervical, a lot of lumbar. My training maybe a tad more so than others. We did a lot more robotic spine surgery maybe than other places just because we were in Philly. The headquarters of Globus is right there in Philly. So we had, a lot of access. We had a lot of robots, and we just did a lot of the robotic spine surgery. Dr. Vaccaro, kind of one of the early creators of kind of robotic spine surgery. He was there. We were doing cases with him every week, kind of seeing him work through those complex robot type cases and trying to do even simultaneous surgery with anterior and posterior at the same time with the robot. So that was kind of a little bit of my niche. We also had some the pioneers in minimally invasive surgery that helped train me. It was Mike Wang at Miami and Greg Anderson and at Rothman. So I have a kind of a keen niche for minimally invasive surgery. But, one thing I always say, I hate cliche expressions. I think every surgeon, and I'm guilty of this, says, oh, I'm a complex and minimally invasive spine surgeon. It's okay, everyone is. So to say that your niche is minimally invasive spine surgery, it's cool, so is everybody. So it's not that groundbreaking thing to say. And I think, the first thing to do is call it out when someone's my specialty is minimally invasive. It's yes, so is everybody these days. I get it.
It's like when marketers say, I'm a digital marketer. I'm yeah, well, yeah, sure you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Everybody else.
Yeah,
what other marketing is there?
Exactly. Exactly. So that's kind of my niche. That's what I've been building. The whole social media thing kind of, came without being expected. it was a sad day when I told my little sister that she was a millennial, and then she told me that I was a millennial, and I had to go Google like your year of birth to see, and I was like, damn it, I really am a millennial. I had no idea. Like, that's very depressing. That's what I consider humbling, is when you get kind of put in your place.
Could be worse. You could be Gen Z.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And so kind of just growing up, just, you and me, we grew up having Facebook and grew up having Instagram and just using it. And so then kind of being around it, and then residency, we're using it, and then kind of just, mushroomed into this thing where I started created like a anonymous account no one knew I had, essentially, because I didn't want to get in trouble for it, for lack of better words, and was putting up board questions and cases. I'd go a year or two without putting anything up, just because, it's a lot of time for no gain back then. And now subsequently it kind of becomes a bigger deal. And now that's where the future is going, in terms of using your social media essentially as a NAS podium. Instead of waiting once a year and maybe getting a NAS podium, if you're lucky enough to have a academic multi-million-dollar research team behind you, I can use a free app and show via screenshot, anyone wants to see it, that I can connect with 80,000 people in one day. And these aren't just, random people. I'm not trying to be Oprah and talk to the whole world. I'm really trying to talk to other people that have an interest in spine surgery, mentorship, medical school. That's kind of my niche I'm focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think you're absolutely right about that, because, again, no knock on those who are in academia who have those multi-million-dollar research teams behind them, but that's not what everybody wants to do. I mean, my own father was a general surgeon of 35 years, and then, not in my opinion, just from his peers and other people, he was a pretty damn good surgeon. He wasn't an academic surgeon, though. And so do surgeons in the private practice world, is their opinion a little bit less valuable? No, definitely not. If anything, and people who are the MedTech execs and the vets who are listening to this will all agree with me. When we talk about technology adoption, we say, the 1 or 2 or 5 surgeons that really pushed the adoption of X, Y, or Z, where were they? 9 out of 10 times, not at a big powerhouse academic center. It's just a surgeon with a small private practice, in somewhere outside of a city. It seems like I've just heard that so many times.
Yeah, outside I do agree with that.
Yeah. So, and I think that social media has this kind of democratizing factor to allowing people to influence. Now, for you have a really good audience so far, which is you have a few thousand on LinkedIn. You have about 15,000, I believe, on Instagram now for your Donnally spine consult. And I'll leave the links in the show notes. But you put a lot of cases up. What I love is that you do a lot of interesting case studies with real life things. If a sports events happen, like football or UFC, you take something from that and then start tying it to a case to kind of explain. So it's really educational for, I think, medical students and residents and fellows. It's educational for other spine surgeons. It's also educational for people who are in the general public, Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole goal with it. Used to start doing it, just putting up kind of board review questions and just, doing that for fun. And then I started putting up publications that other people did. And then I was like, well, I can just actually promote my own publications that I did. So one thing I say is what a time to be alive, where normally you'd have to pay $1,200 to get a every other month journal of the newest publications to read about those. And that's great. But what a time to be alive, to where I could put up a publication that I think is pretty cool, not one of my own, but someone else's. And then through the comments and through that forum, you could have a journal club with people in Egypt, people in Brazil, even the author of that paper. I usually tag them. They could get in on the comments and tell you kind of their method. So if you want to recreate that study or kind of tweak something, no other time you'll be able to do that. You can't really do that at conferences when people are creating. If you're going to go maybe in front of your 80 peers at one of these big conferences and ask a question that you might be embarrassed or think is stupid to ask, that's pretty intimidating. But if you have a forum such as Instagram or LinkedIn, where I put up a journal publication, everyone debates it, that's better for patient care, and that's better for medicine. The more questions you can ask about something, the more we can even critique it, oh, it doesn't make sense, why did this X, Y, and Z happen? That's kind of where the future of medicine should be. We shouldn't be 100% relying on once every couple months journals that you might read, and then you read it and can't really have much dialogue for it. It's kind of a cool asset of this social media that I wasn't really planning on doing when I first started it, but kind of these weekly journal clubs that I put up is pretty cool.
Absolutely. And even, the annual conference, I love annual conferences, but it's just once a year, and that's a lot of time, and things are moving very, very fast. And, we didn't even cover, for example, Twitter. On Twitter, I discovered this many years ago, the nephrologists, of all people, nephrologists have this insanely thriving and engaging community on Twitter. It's called #NephTwitter, where every month they have a Twitter journal club. So they put up a case and they all discuss it. They even have the social media nephrology social media collective, where essentially it's a 1-year fellowship where you're managing different aspects of the neph Twitter community, right? Because they see it as such a valuable asset. And even me, when I was in the nephrology world for a few years, if I had a question, I was able to get on Twitter, throw it up on hashtag neph Twitter, and nephrologists would chime in on really interesting cases. I personally, no offense, to who did our nephrology unit back in medical school, I think I kind of learned more about nephrology on neph Twitter than I did like in our units, you know?
Yeah,
so,
that's a fair point. Yeah, it's like that's kind of the exciting part of it too. And then I'm also able to put up cases. The way I always do it is I put up like a case, you know, I always kind of rip, or in my mind, I kind of like when someone's putting up their fluoros from the intraop, it's like, that's great. But like, you know, one, not super safe, because like if the patient does bad, why are you sharing their images? 2, do you really have their permission to use like their actual intraop pictures? And then 3, like I usually think it's better to wait to the 3-month or 6-month follow-up, make sure everything went well before you're trying to teach others like, hey, here's the slick way I did it. It went great for the first 4 hours after surgery at least. So what I do is
that's a good point.
I put up pre-op images, MRI, CT. I always think like, you know, if you're going to share a case, like someone with real cojones puts up the MRI, like let's have some debate. Anyone can put up x-rays and say, here's the lateral.
That's a great point.
Like, all right.
Man, like, I'm glad you called that out, because sometimes I see it. And again, I was like, sometimes I see it. I'm like, you know, this is misleading, right? I'm like, you know, certain angles, you can make it look real good.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree, man.
That's a good point.
That's a good point, like man. The pre-op and all this stuff, and like, what would you do? Some considerations. I try to throw people off. Like sometimes it's not even a surgical case. It's actually like a radiculopathy case that's like from a virus or something like that. It's not actually from something that needs surgery. And then get a lot of people to debate it, kind of question what we should do. It gets them, you know, it's pretty cool. I get people from like, again, I use Egypt, South Korea, Australia. There's a lot of surgeons there, and like, you know, their use of endoscopic technology is like 5 years more advanced than what we're doing here in the States, and just kind of hearing how they would treat some really complex thing with even more minimally invasive technology is cool. And then about 4 or 5 days later, I'll post my results. And then, you know, when I'm reading all their things, I'm like, oh man, you know, maybe I could have done that. And, you know, even I'm learning from these posts, like I wouldn't have thought of treating it that way, or like getting that additional study. Like wouldn't have, you know, necessarily changed what I did, but it's, you know, it's helping me also. And I hear it all the time, even from like my other kind of young surgeons, just looking at those, listen to comments, like, oh, it's actually a pretty slick way to do it as well, or another differential diagnosis I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for these kind of cases, is most of your, I know it's on multiple platforms, but most of your engagement and discussion is happening mainly on LinkedIn or on Instagram with spine surgeons? Mainly
on Instagram. Instagram is kind of my bread and butter. I guess kind of
really.
I just kind of started. I just want to make
sure I just want to make sure that people heard that, because people laugh about this when I talked about this many years ago. They still do now. The most engagement and discussion with other spine surgeons are happening on your posts on Instagram.
Yeah, but that's mine. I think it's kind of, you got to know your audience. Like I say, if you're trying to, how about this? You'll like this. If you're trying to find like a straight romance, you're not going to go to Grindr. You got to know which app is built for everything. If you're trying to find some guy who's out going clubbing every day and that's like your romance you're looking for, you're not going to Farmers Only. You got to find the exact app for each thing. So like Instagram kind of bridges everything. LinkedIn's more for industry, more for professionals. I agree. You're not, and none of these things, I'm not trying to get any patient interaction. That's not my goal at all. If you want to get patients, that's where you should target Facebook, maybe even TikTok. Like those are kind of the apps for that. When I'm trying to target other referral patterns, primary doctors, med students, things like that, that's very Instagram for me. And then I'm putting more emphasis on LinkedIn now. That's just kind of where I'm at now. I've just kind of started with Instagram, and then I think every doctor, you know, we don't realize that we're small business owners or small business professionals. So I remember, you know, you and I were talking about maybe like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and you were telling me like, man, you got to do more on LinkedIn. I was like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm just a doctor. Why would I get on LinkedIn? You're like, dude, you're a businessman. You're a professional also. It's like, why would you not? I was like, I'm not trying to, you know, get insurance or talk about stocks or anything like that. And you're like, man, you're missing the boat. And so I do credit you.
I appreciate it. And you're one of the few that listen to me.
I know.
You're one of the few that listen to me. I told this to a lot of our classmates, and some of them are coming around now, and they're like, oh, how do I get started? I'm like, yeah, it's better late than never. But like, man, if he just put like a little tiny bit of effort back, then it's, compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world for a reason. It's the same thing with these things. And I think the business and technology of medicine really lives on LinkedIn. With Instagram, I love Instagram. It's a great platform, but if you haven't already noticed, it's more difficult to grow and have reach on Instagram because it's just so much more competitive. LinkedIn, while it's not as competitive and it's faster to grow, it has this weird dynamic where, for example, on Instagram, you can, somebody can come out with something just really ridiculous and just blow past you in terms of engagement, followers, etc. overnight. On LinkedIn, it's easy to grow and do it repetitively, but you really have to demonstrate, deep domain expertise and knowledge. Otherwise, like very quickly, peers and people within the LinkedIn community are like, yeah, this guy's like full of it, So it's very interesting dynamics.
Yeah,
I tell people, you know what I tell people? I think you'll like this a lot. God, I hope I don't get kicked. I'm going to say this just because it's hilarious, but I hope I don't get banned off LinkedIn. LinkedIn is kind of like the North Korea of social media. And, minus all the bad things of North Korea, but it's kind of like the North Korea of social media because I know, like, I'm connected to people who have hundreds of thousands, a couple of them who have millions of followers on, like, Instagram or on Twitter or on TikTok or on Facebook, and they'll be, like, blowing up and they have, like, multi-platform reach, but some of them, just because like LinkedIn's had, I think, a marketing problem, are just not on LinkedIn. So they don't even know what's going on LinkedIn. That's why I say it's like kind of like the North Korea of social media.
Yeah, that's a fair thing. It's like, you can only pick so many platforms maybe. Like I don't mess with Twitter. I have a Twitter account. I think I have like 20 followers. It's just, you got to
pick a few and go with it.
It sounds like copy and paste everything. It's got to be a lot shorter. I can only do like 1 or 2 pictures there. And so
I don't do TikTok.
Yeah, it's I'm embarrassed to say I do it, but not nearly as much as I used to.
Man, you're on TikTok? I can't. Now that alone is making me want to open a TikTok.
Look, man. Okay, my argument.
But then all of China is going to know what I'm up to.
They already know, man. Don't even worry about that. One of my buddies, named Matt Harb, he's a joint surgeon in Baltimore. He was one saying like, you should be on TikTok, and I was like, okay, there's not too many 14-year-old kids with spine stuff. What are you doing? He's like, one, remember, we're not marketing to patients. I'm like, that's true. He's one of my counterparts in this. It's a guy named Matt Harb. He's great. He's like, we're not marketing to patients. He's like, the way I use it, he's like, I do the videos, I save them, and then I use it on my other platforms. I'm like, now you're talking my language. So I do that, and I also put those same videos I save on YouTube, and then I put those YouTube videos on my own website. And so people that know even a little bit about SEO and website SEO, YouTube's a huge thing for SEO. So if I have content on YouTube that links back to my website that someone else is clicking, when someone types in Spine Dallas, that helps me without having to pay any money jump up on the top 10 features. The more YouTube videos I have, and I'm just doing that through TikTok.
That's exactly right.
That's my argument why someone should do TikTok. I'm not trying to get TikTok famous. I'm more so just trying to make content for my other platforms.
But if you blew up like a Dr. Miami on TikTok,
yeah,
I mean, why not? Like, look, I mean, I'm focused on developing a business and a brand and reputation like within the medical technology, medical industry. But if for whatever reason I blow up and I don't know, I guess things I'm interested in, like, books and everything, Penguin and Harper Publishing is like, hey, can we just pay you like, 6 figures a year just to sort of be our brand representative? Like, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I tell people this all the time. I don't know how I'll do it. I'm on a quest. Like, one of my random little goals is that I want to be the first B2B marketer to get a shoe deal. I want to be the first.
Okay.
So B2C marketer who's gotten a shoe deal, that's already happened. That was Gary Vaynerchuk. But I want to be the first B2B. At least that's going to be very competitive as well. But at least within the medical healthcare, I think I got a good shot. Good shoe deal. Nike, if you're listening.
I'm all about getting sponsored. If someone wants to sponsor me, we say there's people, when I lived in Miami, we always say, oh, that person's sponsored by that person. And like that girl's sponsored by those guys, and they get to kind of do whatever they want. I was like, I'm happy to be sponsored myself. If Stryker wants to put a tattoo on my shoulder, I'll get like a Stryker or a Zimmer right here if they want to sponsor me.
Man, I'll tell I'll absolutely. You know what's funny? How is it that with all these, like, again, consumer brands coming out, you have Figs who blew up in the scrub world. How is it that nobody came up and said, hey, we're going to make performance athletic gear for surgeons, like shoes, like You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
how's that not happening?
Smaller market, man. It's gotta be smaller. There's only like 1,000. Like,
Look, if you look at cardiothoracic surgeons, there's 10,000 of them in the United States alone. And you just look, you make shoes. What would be $100 for Nike? You mark it up by $400 or $500. Special 8 hour long technology for standing. I don't know.
So my first couple months, like, everyone's not super busy trying to stay productive, and there's one of those things like my wife, she goes on Instagram and sees like girls pretty much getting paid to say what purse they're using, and they're like, oh, I like using this purse also. And I was like, well, hell, I like Ariat boots, and I wear Ariat boots every case in the OR. I was like, man, if Ariat, so I sent them an email, like 2 emails, no response back from me, like, hey, if you guys want to send me a pair of boots, I'm 11D, I will put up like an Instagram thing. I was like, I get at least, that was back a little earlier on, I was like, I get at least 30,000, 40,000 views on this. Love just to say I love your boots, I wear them anyway, and like nothing. And I was like, dude, that would be the easiest $200 of advertising they could ever do. And you just wonder, like, obviously
more
there's
than that.
Super smart people that run these companies, but like the people that get these emails, like, oh, you just are totally missing an opportunity here.
Yeah, there's really not actually a lot of these companies. They don't have super smart people. I mean, like, look again. Fair, I tell people all the time, like, when it comes to micro influencers, you're way better off engaging 5 micro influencers who are physicians who have, like, let's say a blog, whatever. They have a small following of like a few thousand people, than getting like one massive name, which at the end of the day, everybody and their mother's going after that one massive whale of a name. They don't really care about you. And then to actually engage with them, they're going to be super transactional. They don't give a damn about your company. They're like, yeah, sure. Man. Like, look, here's my price. Here's what it's going to take. And oh, by the way, everything you're going to do, you're going to give it to us for free.
I just wanted a pair of Ariat boots. I was like, I retired my pair from residency. It had all forms of HIV and hepatitis C on it, and I needed some nice, fresh, clean boots to get out of Miami.
That's such a, I gotta tell you, so being a guy from like West Texas, like, I appreciate how Texan you are. It really means a lot. And like now I'm stuck.
You can tell a Texan.
I know, dude. I'm stuck by choice because of my family. I'm a family man. But here in Southern California, it is beautiful here. I do love it. I miss Texas. I miss the people there. I'm having a baby boy in a few months. The fact that you in Florida had a child and you made sure that dirt from Texas was shipped over so that it could be put under the bed so they were born on Texan stuff. Let me tell you, as insane as that was. Oh, I did know that. I saw that. As crazy as that was, I admired the hell out of that. I'm like, this is a man that's proud of where he's from. I love that.
Yeah, one of my doctors, Dr. Chin, he was like, this guy, he was just like, he'll say anything he's thinking. How about that? And he's like, I heard a rumor about Texans, and I thought he was messing with me. I'm like, what's that? He's like, I heard that they'll fly in soil from Texas and put it under the kid's bed when they get born. I'm like, I actually did do that. He's like, you're kidding me. I was like, no, like, I actually did that like 2 weeks ago. Did someone tell you that? He was like, no, I just heard that. I had to ask him. Like, yeah, I definitely did do that. He was like,
I might do it. My wife might kill me though. I really want to do it. Maybe because you had like a solid, like, looked like 5 or 10 pounds or so. It was pretty impressive.
You got to get the whole bed up on it. Maybe that could be your new business model. You could just sell soil from each state. So you get someone from Iowa. They're like, man, I want my kid born in Iowan soil. What's the
Iowan soil? Yeah, Iowan soil. You know what? Look, there's a lot of people who are really proud in the South and Midwest. I feel like it could be done, man.
It's a small market, but I think that this is where your true calling is.
So, but you know what? This is you want to talk about. That's true. You know what? Here's a whole. Yeah. Well, this is a whole other podcast, but there's this concept and strategy called category design, meaning that you don't go into an existing market and compete. You go and create a completely new market, which at the beginning will be nothing. But if you find something that has a new problem, new and different, you can blow it up. So back in the 90s, when Evian polled a bunch of people, and hundreds of people say, hey, what does this taste like? It tastes like water. Would you pay for this? Everybody said no. But here we are. Bottled water is a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
So anything's possible,
have
man.
the biggest markups in the world, and coffee. But coffee's a good drug, so.
I'm having one right now.
Yeah, that's a different markup reason.
So So getting this, I knew this podcast was gonna be great. I know for a fact I'm gonna get so many different messages and emails saying like, you got to have that guy back on. Like, I'm gonna have you back on. But let's talk real quick about spine technologies. So I've seen you've used navigation. You're a robotic, you're a robotic surgeon as well. You use a lot of interesting technology. Let's call some shots. So what is the current state of spine surgery as it is, and where do you see it going 10, 15 years from now? You can take this in any direction you want, and by all means, call out whoever you want.
No. So, I don't know. You think about it, like, things like the robot, I think, are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing the robot, but the problem with the robot right now, and I mean, you're more an expert than I am because you used to work in this field, is they're just too expensive. But it's like getting, like, a nice 70-inch TV, which would be awesome. Crazy price, but, like, you try to buy that exact TV in, like, 4 years from now, 1 year from now, the prices just slash. So, like, robots are awesome. Until they get to be a lot cheaper, they're not going to be able to take off. And, maybe we'll get to the day where you just pull it up to the side of the bed, almost like a Metrix tube system, and you can just plop them in. And, like, it's easy to have multiple small little arm robots that hook up to the bed in each hospital. And, like, that's where you get the argument of where it gets better. One of the better, more fun papers I've read on robot technology is Qureshi wrote it. He's at HSS. It was like in the International Journal of Spine Surgery, just came out last year.
Who wrote this?
Qureshi.
Oh, Qureshi. Okay.
Yeah, it's great. Pretty much he compared the robotic revolution to the industrial revolution and like a lot of the pearls and like a lot of things he was arguing.
I read that article. That was really good.
It was kind of a fun paper. The thing he keeps arguing is like it's all about the reproducibility of doing something. And like, yes, all of us surgeons say we're great at freehand screws. It slows us down to otherwise. Like, okay, I agree with that. But that's maybe you're doing like 4 screws, 6 screws. If you're doing like a bunch of cases, you're getting tired at the end of the day. Like that's where you sometimes make mistakes, but robots don't get tired. Robots don't make mistakes. I agree. It's garbage in, garbage out. But if you have a good CT scan, you're not messing around. Like the accuracy rate is about 98%. And so they're just safer. If you get a fast team, you get everything just going better. Like, yes, it's going to be slow this first 4 or 5 times. And then the surgeon by that point is like, I don't want to do robot anymore. Like it's been 2 or 3 times. Like this is slow as molasses. I don't want to keep doing it. Like, okay, I agree. So I'm not saying like robots are like in the immediate future of this success, but like, dude, 10, 15 years from now when they get cheaper, faster, better, like we can use them to do so many things. Like another thing I hate about, the only reason I don't sometimes like doing tubular decompressions, like through the small 18 millimeter incisions, is like closing that deep fascia layer. Like it's sometimes like that's such a pain in the butt. It might take me 20 minutes to throw like 2 or 3 stitches. Well, if you had like a little robot,
you're not operating on small people either. Like they're pretty big.
Exactly.
People
We're in Texas.
sometimes.
We're in Texas. But if you had like a little robot that could come through and just like throw a couple stitches, like, man, that'd be so much easier. I know no one's like thinking that's where we're headed or anything like that, but like, who knows? In like 10, 15 years from now, like that could be something that just is an additional thing of robots. We can't just think of robots as placing pedicle screws. That's not where we're going to have our long-term success with those.
Let me touch on an area that like spine surgeons might be like, no, that robot can't do it. Because like pedicle screws, a lot of surgeons take a lot of pride in placing them, but for the most part, it's kind of like monotonous. And it's just like whatever. What if there's a robot that can do a discectomy? Would you want that robot?
I mean, not on myself. I agree, but it's also like, how about this? We see all these movies of like Prometheus, where it's like in hundreds of years from now, you can go into a little medical bay and it fixes you up for everything. Like at some point, I think everyone will agree. At some point in not our lifetime, but in the future, that will happen. And so why are we saying that we can't just keep taking those next steps every couple of years here of like the robot doing something? So it's not a crazy concept to think that a robot will do all of its surgery for you. It's not going to happen in our lifetime. I hope it doesn't happen in our kids' lifetime because then we'll all be out of business. But it's just something like that's where we're going. It's not like you can develop that overnight. It's like making space shuttles going to Mars. Like we're not going to make that back in the 60s. We kind of have stuff that gets us to the moon. We have stuff that gets us back and forth to the space station more efficiently. Kind of more we commercialize it, the more industry gets involved, like the better this technology gets. And industry can't get a bad name for trying to make a profit on these things. It's not like if Musk and all these guys were not able to make a profit, which I guess technically he doesn't on some of the companies, but on some of these things, then why would they keep trying to develop these new technologies? And that's where we need industry to kind of push it forward. They need money for additional research.
I totally agree. Well, so one of the challenges, though, is, I mean, we've talked about this before, is the barrier to adoption. So, I mean, cost is definitely one thing, but it goes beyond cost. I mean, one of those things is and I want you to kind of touch more upon this, is that the, the trade-off in terms of when you adopt a new technology, like even if it's better for the patient, right, or it makes a marginal difference, right? What's the trade-off to a surgeon? And you talked about the reasons why adoption is going to happen with younger spine surgeons versus like forget about an older spine surgeon. Let's just say a surgeon who's like 10, 20 years out of training. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so if you're, 20 years out of training, say you're in your late 40s, 50s, man, you're in the prime of your career. Whatever field you're in, usually in your 40s, 50s, you're in some of the highest earning potential. You're at the most efficient. You're like working hard, but you're also getting the most reward for it. So why would you want to learn something that's going to slow you down, that's going to have some type of acceptable complication rate while you're getting through that learning curve? There's just no point. It's like, I get it. If you're in your 50s and you're, the peak of your career, why are you going to go learn all these minimally invasive or robot or emerging technology things? Like, you're already the king. Similarly, the people that are like at the key figures of these fellowship and spine training programs, both neurosurgery and spine surgery, those are those people. So they're not going to want to be integrating some of this new technology when they're already doing great at what they're doing. So I think as people in their, mid 40s are kind of rising through the ranks, they're going to demand this new technology at their hospital systems, at their training center. Then those coming through will have that new technology and they'll grow up with it. So I think it just is kind of a slow trickle down effect that you have to have. It's not like someone can just all of a sudden learn how to do these things. They have to be taught by someone, or have someone that's kind of influencing them to tell them this is the way to go. And that's, one of the things I've seen on Instagram. I've become pretty good friends with probably 7 or 8 spine surgeons I would have never met my whole life, but because we interact with each other, we now like have each other's cell phone. I text them cases and all this stuff just because they're using some of this technology that I wasn't as familiar with. And I was like, man, this guy's killing it. And like outside of Denver, and I just want to learn more about that also.
Now, let me. I was gonna hold off to write about this, but shit, we're talking about it now, so I might as well bring it up. So let me put a thought out there, and I want to hear your reaction to this. And let's pretend that a new spine technology comes out, something new. Doesn't matter what it is, but something that's obviously going to level the playing field for something important between, let's say, younger neurosurgeons out of training versus somebody who's been doing it for 10 or 20, 30 years, right? Not every surgeon who, let's say, is 20, 30 years out of training is going to be the best at what they're doing. Because in their geography, let's say it's not a small town, let's say that it's a medium-sized city even, there's going to be someone else who might be better. So there's going to be the king or the queen, and then there's going to be everybody else. Everybody else who's been doing this for 20 or 30 years is saying, I need something to kind of level the playing field. Like, I need to like pass this person. Like, I just can't do it right now purely on technique. And so is it far-fetched to say this new spine technology comes out, there's a handful, 3, 4, 5, 10 younger surgeons out of training who are like, we're going to push this as the new standard, right? They're all in different geographies, but they work together. They're like, we have the vision, but we're going to push this. And through their own personal marketing, you can call it micro-influencer marketing, other people who are, let's say, 30, 40 years into practice see the new technology and be like, I'm so down to adopt that thing because that's the thing that's going to give me an edge over this other person who just by coincidence has been in this area longer, has this tenureship, blah, 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 all these things. I know I'm a better surgeon, but like I can't overcome that. But this is the one thing that'll make me different enough to compete. Is that a possibility to help drive adoption?
Dude, for sure. Some of these technologies, like the only way you get to know about these new things is, let's go back 10 years. How do you know about new technologies? One, you go to a conference that's every year in a city that's not where you live.
You go to NAS or ESMIS.
Right. And like, okay, that's great, but like a lot of people with young kids, it's not as able to go every year. So that's the only way you, one, learn about it, or two, you have your rep and kind of knocking at your door trying to tell you new things. It's like, I don't know, does anyone else do it? They tell you people's names in town. You're like, those guys are kind of sketchy. I don't know if I want to use that. Okay, so that's the normal way of how you figure out new things. Nowadays, we have, just as we were saying, LinkedIn and Instagram, where you're able to just look here. You're able to value people's opinions based on their prior cases they've done, prior cases they've shared, prior management decisions they've made. And when you see they're using something slick, you're like, hey, I would actually be pretty interested in that. So my training was big on expandable TLIF cages. Like we used the old Globus cage a ton, like with Dr. Vaccaro and Kepler, or actually Vaccaro didn't use it a lot. He used a different one. He used the C-spine one, I think. But Kepler, like we're all big expandable. I think expandable technology is great. You get, we're doing a lot of open cases, so you obviously are open decompression, but if they expand, then that's indirect decompression built in. So it's like man, you really just can't mess up. The nice thing about this cage, it opens medial lateral, and I keep saying like that's the future of these expandable
That's
cages.
Really interesting.
So you like an
That's
ALIF
super
footprint.
interesting.
I know. The only problem is like because it's new and fancy, like certain hospitals pretty much don't want it because it's pretty expensive, I guess. And it's a whole long can of worms I'm opening, and I'm sure I'm going to get text messages, good and bad, for it. But I think it's a great technology. It's one of the things that I considered a game changer. They probably love that I consider it a game changer. But it's just something like that. And so if I'm able to show other people it, then that helps. I say in some cases it can help replace an ALIF. And I got buddies who practice in New Jersey, and they said there are groups that do like their vascular approach for ALIF. They won't do it if it's a Medicare patient, which is a totally different debate. And I get, and most people that need ALIFs are over 65. And so I was like, man, that sucks. So you just can't do ALIFs? He's like, no, I got to do O-lifts, which are fine, a little more dangerous, but fine. Or I could do a T-lift at 5'1", if I'm using a dinky cage the size of your pinky. Like, man, you're really doing any difference there? So I was like, you should look at this cage. It's like, it's like the size of like two of my thumbs. It's nice and giant. Maybe it's even bigger than that. But that's, again, kind of circling back to not to be a 5-minute promo for the technology that neither of us have any stake in.
Again, you're not paid by them, like, at all.
I know.
Yeah.
So the whole argument with that is like, we got to get, that's like where social media is very helpful. It's like you can kind of promote certain things.
Yeah, and something that I would say, surgeons, doctors don't want to say this. I'm going to say this for physicians. I want to live in a society where physicians are getting paid, and they're getting paid really damn well. Because what pisses me off, okay, and I think every surgeon who's listening to this is going to say, hell yeah, like 100%, is that you as a surgeon will be in a case killing yourself, taking all kinds of risks, again, right? Not only your health in terms of how many hours you're in there, but of course, like, if something doesn't go well, and a lot of times, like, the patient walks out, and because, let's say, they don't listen to you for certain things, they do something stupid, so there's all kinds of risks, right? You get paid net 30, net 60, net 90. The reps in the room and everybody else gets paid that day. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's not the reps' fault, but it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
So my thing is if you like something, and let's put something else out there. In the medical world, the spine world is a dirty world. You have you have physician-owned pods. Like, there's a lot of stuff there. But that still being said, I don't think there's anything wrong if a surgeon uses a technology that they like, right? It's not, it's one thing if they're getting paid more to use that technology, and if they don't get paid, they're not going to use it for the pay. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about is, if you're going to go out of your way to use your platform that you took time to build up over the years, and you put time and effort into it, and you're going to promote it to make it easier for somebody else to go and grow their business, you should be getting paid for that. Period. End of story. I'm going on record saying that needs to happen.
Yeah, it's I feel like it's a slippery slope. So I agree to an extent.
Everything's a slippery slope, though, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so there's certain things I like more than others. Doesn't mean just because I tell people I like them that someone should get paid to do it. But that's kind of the nice thing about even LinkedIn is I see new technologies on there. There's been a couple actually that I saw, and I was like, man, that's pretty sweet. And so I'll shoot that either to one of my 4 reps I work with and be like, is this something we can get our hands on? And usually they always say yes, and we try it out, and that's kind of how it goes. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't. I just shoot in that link.
And look, something even simpler. Let's say you like something, and this happens in the consumer world. I don't see why it's not okay for the physician world. And you can look, these companies, a lot of this stuff that we're talking about doesn't fall under the some of it doesn't fall under like Sunshine Act or Stark Law. Anything that does, they can document it. And let's just say, look, you took time to create some content. If they want to take it and repurpose it themselves, you should be paid for that content, right? Yeah. I think companies need to go out of their way to think about physicians, and let's get away from the promotional stuff. Let's look at something simple as labs. I don't think I think companies need to figure out how to do a better job taking care of surgeons. If you go and do a lab, right? And let's say a lot of young surgeons who come out there in debt and everything, you get paid what, a few $100, maybe $1,000 that day to teach a lab. Meanwhile, the company has like 10, 20, 30 surgeons showing up, and they can make a lot of profit off that. Now, I'm not saying, and this is another slippery slope. I'm not saying that industry needs to go and start paying like insane. Some surgeons come to me and they're like, yeah, I'll do this lab and you got to pay me this much. I'm like, no, that's crazy. but they have to think about other things to help surgeons. So for example, when I was early on in my career, where I couldn't pay a surgeon, that kind of money, I'd say, look, here's what I can help. I know you're trying to, let's say, build a brand online. We can help promote some of your posts. For example, I can teach you some things that'll make you more proficient at these things. Those kind of things. That's how they have to think. And I think that reps who think more about their surgeons say, like, look, there's a small business owner. What are some other ways we can help? I think that becomes a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, that's kind of where even like locally, they're like, I always say there's not too much difference between pedicle screws. They're all the same. There is a fair amount of difference between certain cages.
Ooh,
otherwise, like
blasphemy.
The big thing is like the added value of, say, your rep. And if a rep's kind of tied to the community, it's like, hey, like, and they want to kind of help introduce you to some of their other colleagues who are like in the medical field. Like, that's a nice added benefit in terms of kind of a non-monetary way a rep kind of help you just kind of grow your name. That's the whole thing. Like, I don't expect them to go, have Stryker, for instance, like the Stryker reps dropping off my business cards at, pain centers or something like that. But if they can help like make connections or bridge gaps, like two people that have similar interests, similar age groups, similar backgrounds, that's kind of a nice way I
totally
could be looking for.
Tell me, what's your take on the value of a rep? For me, I think there's a lot of like reps that provide no value. They just literally show up and throw a product at you and sell. There are other ones though that I feel like are like a right hand of a surgeon. So what's your idea of like a great rep?
Okay, so reps were a huge part of my training, especially in residency for like ortho trauma, for instance. Like there'd be certain things, when you're running two rooms, you're attending to the other room, and you're like, it's you and the chief resident, you're kind of like trying to figure it out also. Like even like starting points on nails. The reps are indispensable. I feel like, they get a bad name. But like, man, these reps have so much more experience. Sometimes I joke and say, it's like, man, you've done this more than I have. Like, I'm just moving my hand. You kind of guide me. Like, what do you think I need next? And they could tell you, like, oh, move your hand this way, move your hand that way. The reps are teachers in a way. Like, they've been doing it for certain fields. They've been doing it much longer than some of the surgeons have. So they're huge. Kind of now on the other side, now that I've, have a significant handful of cases under my belt and worked with reps, like, still, again, I'm young in the game. So, like, a lot of these reps, I'd say most of them have more total case volume than I have. It doesn't, different skill sets in terms of doing it. I always quote my hero who I light a candle for every night, Mike Wang, down at Miami. He would always say a monkey could do spine surgery. He says you can teach a monkey how to move their hands a certain way. He's like, that's not the hard part. The hard part's like the diagnosis, kind of knowing what to do next. Fortunately, I haven't had I can't think of like any time where I was like completely stumped about something like that. But it's nice when the rep's thinking about the next step, or the rep's knowing that you're going to need a certain tool next and they have it up. When a rep knows what type of drain you like to use, the rep knows what music you like to have on, the rep knows you like an X-ray shield in the room because you don't like to wear lead and you don't wear, just those little things. That's kind of where the reps to me help stand out. It's not just bringing the screw, it's kind of knowing the next steps and knowing kind of maybe some bailout options, or knowing, oh, maybe you should use this table, or hey, maybe this would be a good navigation case that you posted with us that you didn't post for navigation. Like sometimes those T1 screws, I saw this patient's BMI, like maybe you want to nav that. I'm like, that's actually a good idea. That's where they really stand out.
I totally agree. And, I think just by coincidence, like my first gig was at Mazor Robotics, which was the first robotic spine company. And for us, like the clinical sales reps, we had to be in every case because we technically controlled the robot and worked with the surgeons on planning. And we had to really learn these things like inside and out so we can really be looked at as a peer. And that started to extend beyond just the robotic spine case. We had to know a lot about the discectomy. We have to know about practice marking of a variety of different things. And I feel like those reps still exist, but a lot of people, I feel like the bigger the company, the less likely the rep does that because they just lean on the brand of the company. And they're like, whatever, it's not my thing.
Yeah, some do agree. I mean, I sometimes jokingly say, like with my anesthesiologist I'm good as buddies with, like there are many cases I do where we count and there's 9 different reps in the room. And like, I'm like, man, how is it, like there's so much money going around in this room that is not going to the physicians. Like, I guarantee they're all making more money on this case than both you and I, and you're on the hook for anything that happens for the next 90 days, and any money you make, you have to divide up amongst your staff and give, 40% to the government. He's like, so it's just outstanding, like how many reps are in the room and like how much training do each of them have. That said, I really don't have a bad rep I've worked with. I know I'm not saying this because I doubt any of them are ever going to listen to this podcast, but for the most part, companies know what they're doing. If they're trying to recruit a new doctor to kind of get some of their business, they're usually sending some of their best team members. So I've been pretty lucky on that standpoint. And that's nice, kind of starting out, them having a planned C, D, E, and F is good because I might only have like A, B, and C.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think, at least for me, that's one thing that I'm hoping to influence more, which is the training of sales reps and, the marketers as well, because I feel that very much to the training that we got in medical school, you really got to know what the hell you're doing in this industry. It's not, and I think that's what keeps me in the med side. I mean, look, I had a 1 year stint, which felt like 5 years because it was a startup in the SaaS fintech world. And I came back to medtech because there's complexity in this field that's unlike anything else. And you really have to know what you're doing, how things work, even something as simple as like, there is a big difference. And you tell me, I could be wrong about this. So if I'm wrong, just call me out on it. There's a big difference on average psychologically when you're dealing with a spine surgeon who's neurosurgically trained and a spine surgeon that is orthopedically trained. There's a difference.
Yeah,
I think
there's definitely a difference. I don't know. I think just, yeah, there's
not
a difference
that one
for
is
sure.
better than the other.
Yeah,
not
I
that
agree.
one that's
I agree. I'm
better
not
than the other.
either.
Just that there are differences there that you have to understand and appreciate.
Super broad generalizations here, okay? We're doing super broad generalizations.
Super broad.
As a broad generalization, orthopedic programs are larger in terms of maybe the average size is 4, 5, 6. Mine, the one I was in was 7. That's considered a pretty big one. A year, and it's 5 years. So there's 35 of you. Broad generalization, neurosurgery maybe has 1, 2, 3. Some of them are like really big, have 4. So there's smaller. Again, 7 years. So maybe the whole body total equals out. The reason I'm getting to that is also like just towards your training, there's a little more maybe camaraderie and one where you have a big program. Also very broad generalization. Orthopedics as a stereotype are former athletes, maybe former jocks, people who wanted to go pro and got a sports injury is kind of the classic thing. Like they got a sports injury and that was their exposure to medicine and they wanted to go into medicine, and then because they saw an ortho doc, now they want to be an ortho doc. Again, broad generalization. So broad, and then neurosurgery, you think, maybe I think most people think brain is the first thing that goes to their mind. Like you see a neurosurgeon, think a brain surgeon. So those broad generalization, very smart people, very people that are very like focused on like, oh, I want to be a brain surgeon. I want to be like kind of king of the castle, king of the world because I'm a brain surgeon. It doesn't get sexier than that. Whereas ortho, you're just thinking about pumping weights, fixing bones, things like that. And so then when you go to spine, kind of things align again, but you still have kind of the background of how you got there. So again,
that's
broad generalization. That's
broad
kind of the background of neurosurgery versus ortho. You get the spine, it's a little different background.
But this is why like NAS is so interesting to me, because when you see these podium, you have a collision of like neurosurgeons and orthopedic surgeons. It's just really fascinating to see. Which, by the way, if you probably follow Dr. Glauco McFecken.
Yep.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
You saw the orthopedic ones, like oh man,
they're so accurate. Dude. That was a new find for me. That guy's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, the part from the it was for the audience listening. There's he's a physician who does TikTok videos. So he did one on an orthopedic surgeon like interviewing for residency with the program director, and he's like. Program director, bro, resident, bro, what's up? He's like, tell me about yourself. Well, I'm, born in Iowa, the strongest of 5 children. And he's like, great. He's like, what are you thinking about right now? Arm wrestling. And I think he asked another question like about, like what is bone marrow? And his answer was like, doesn't matter. That's internal medicine's problem.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, what's your favorite tool? He's like hammer. He's like, what are you going to do right now? He's like arm wrestle. And
yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's right. That's again broad. It's funny because like back, all of our attendings would tell us, man, when we were going through it, if you had the lowest grades for your standardized testing, you got into ortho. Ortho is the easiest thing to get into. Now it probably goes derm, plastics, then ortho. Ortho is probably the hardest to get into because there's just so many more people going to it. There's more spots than probably derm, but if you look at all like the advanced metrics, it's ortho is kind of the hardest thing to get into now. It's one of those things where I look back at like where I went to college, SMU, which I think is a pretty good school. Like I don't think now I could get into SMU. Like it's gotten so much better. I think the same thing with ortho. Like, man, I don't know. Like I was pretty accomplished in med school. Like I don't know if I would have gone to Miami if I could try again. How about that?
Yeah, no. I hear it. And what's interesting, and just again, these are the kind of things that I tell reps. Like you have to understand who you're working with and the field, like historically, culture, and everything, to understand these things. Becker's came out with a study that showed level of satisfaction with their jobs, right? Or their jobs and not their jobs, level of satisfaction with how much they're paid. And orthopedic surgeons were like number like 9 or 10, like they were really low down. And my interpretation of that, and I was explaining this to somebody who's a young rep, he's like, oh, like why are they unhappy with their pay? I'm like, it's not that orthopedic surgeons feel like they're not getting paid enough. Is that most orthopedic surgeons, if not all of them, are extremely competitive, very entrepreneurial, very much in terms of like building. So that's never going to change, right? I think at the very top was like psychiatrists. I'm like, and it's not, most psychiatrists, they do want to. I know a few. They want to get paid more, but they're a lot more okay with just kind of coasting and like, hey, I'm happy where things are and everything. Orthopedic surgeons every year, it's like, how can I go bigger and bigger and more?
That's what we always joked about whenever anesthesia would delay us, or whenever they'd be talking about they had like several weeks off for vacation or just like the workout. It's like, hey man, like they picked anesthesia for a reason. You can't rip on them. Like this is what they wanted to do. So it's like, who are we to be like, hey, you got to work harder or faster or something like that? It's like, man, like that was like your choice.
That's true.
Like,
well,
this is it.
And like just going even further, like my dad's general surgeon, trained at Cook County Hospital like in the 70s, and his thing was like they used to always make fun of the orthopedic surgeons because they're like, oh, that's such a nice job, you like really nice hours and everything. Like that's really cute, guys. Like, so
exactly.
These kind of colloquialisms in medicine are great. So getting I guess I don't know if there's even a track anymore on this episode, which is why this episode is going to be just absolutely fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about some other technologies you feel like, again, 15 years from now, I don't want to do something nuts like 40, 50 years from now. It's just like, that's just too far out. The farther you go out, the harder it is to predict. But based on what you're seeing right now, you just came out of training, you're getting exposed to a lot of different technologies. Like, what are some other things that you feel that maybe not become standard, but just you're expecting to happen in the next 10 or 15 years in spine?
So you keep hearing about like artificial intelligence in spine surgery. It sounds cute, but really the key argument of that is being able to plug in certain metrics of the patient. Like there's standardized scored called like one for the neck, one for the back, called like ODI, and how much back pain. You can enter that, enter some of the patient's walking characteristics, their age, some of their demographics, and it kind of could spit out and tell you what kind of surgery, and MRI characteristics, it kind of spit out and tell you which surgery is the most helpful for patients. Sometimes we're maybe decompressing 2 or 3 extra levels than we need to, or fusing 2 or 3 extra levels than we need to, just because maybe their MRI looks bad on multiple levels. So we can kind of pinpoint, hey, with this type of deformity, with this type of pathology, and this patient's, if it's an 89-year-old lady, we don't need to be doing like a 4-level fusion on her, for instance, like that. Maybe it's just a laminectomy. Some of these things we know, but if we can have like a computer model that's easy to use, that can almost do it for us, like it's just built in the background. Like right now, some of these things exist, but man, I got to go to a website. I got to enter all the patient stuff. I have to measure things on my computer. It's going to add like 40 minutes.
It's all manual.
Yeah. Exactly. So if there's something, 10 years from now where it's like just already pre-populated, like that'd be great. That said, the insurance companies would probably get a hold of that and find some way to suck more money out of the surgeons so that the hospital administrators could have more money. But that'd be kind of the one downside of some of the AI technology.
Yeah, it's true. The unfortunate thing about the EMR is that it's really just a massive billing tool. That's really what the EMR is. It's just, it's kind of the unfortunate thing. Yep. So something that's come up, and I heard about it, and I maybe I just been out of spine for a few years, so it was kind of a shock to me, but what's your take? Have you heard more about these like in-office kyphoplasties?
I have.
Thoughts?
I don't know, man. I guess it's one of those things where, so how about this? I thought they were kind of crazy, barbaric, but then like some guy I respect pretty highly, I found out was doing them, and I'm like, man, maybe like I'm the bad guy. Like I'm taking this, I don't do too many kyphoplasties anymore. I kind of did when I was first starting out. Now it's kind of, if I've done one before on a patient, it's hard for me to send her to someone else to do it. But like, if it's some like 88-year-old lady and it's super expensive and like, just a drain on the whole healthcare system, and it's going to, that's like a 3-hour, the kyphoplasty itself takes 15 minutes, but like getting into the OR, pre-op, they're not healthy, cardiac clearance. I don't know, man, maybe
getting through the 3 layers of fascia.
Yeah, maybe doing it in the office like is better for the patient. It's more immediate relief. We're not going through all this stuff. So I don't know. It's one of those things where sometimes, like I do this frequently. When I see something crazy, I'm like, man, am I the bad guy here? Like maybe I'm wrong. And I really try to do that with a lot of things. Like flip on the other side. It's like maybe I'm the bad guy, or like maybe I think I'm doing it great, but like maybe I'm not. Maybe this guy was doing something I think is crazy. Like this is the future. So I don't know, man. It's again, it's the same thing through social media. Like I found out via social media he was doing it, and I texted him and I was like, man, like, doing these in the office? Like, it sounds crazy. He's like, yeah, like, definitely hurts the patients, like maybe a little more because they're not fully sedated, but they're in and out. I'm like, so I don't know, man. Again, I don't know if that's, I'm definitely just not the expert on that.
Yeah, no, it's again, there's like a lot of really interesting things that are coming up. There's another one. I don't know if you're familiar with Alok Sharhan. Have you heard of Alok Sharhan?
No.
So he's up in the Northeast, and I
Oh,
actually
yeah,
I
I
have
know
him
that.
on.
He's like in New Jersey, I think.
He's in New Jersey,
Right?
that's right, and he's doing literally awake spinal surgery.
Yep.
Which
Yeah,
I need to get into the details of that. But
well,
I'm
a believer. I don't do it myself. I'm a believer. Mike Wing was another guy at Miami. He really popularized that also. And like, man, I saw it happen. Like, these patients, no joke, would come into the OR, and in like under an hour, it'd be like 58 minutes, like very frequently would get like a 1-level TLIF even, and they did such little narcotics. I swear to God, I saw it, and then people would be like, oh, were they doing this for the wrong indications? And one, I'd slap them forever speaking ill advised of Mike Wing, but no, they weren't. And they'd be like, oh, those patients even do well. And I was like, man, when I was with them on my like rotations, like they did great. And so his thing he would always harp on were indications. I had some of the reps come to my office the other day, kind of pitching some of the same technology he was using, not the awake part. And I was like, all right, so what are the indications? They're like, anything, you name it. I'm like, is it like, older patients with low? They're like,
God.
Right. They're like, they could be some in their 40s, could be some in their 80s. And I was like, and then I told them, well, Mike Wang, like the godfather of all this, he was going to really preach the indications. I was like, honestly, I didn't really pay too much attention to it back then because I'm still trying to figure out like how to tie my shoes when I'm wearing a boot when I'm in residency. But that was kind of my argument for it. It's like, I saw it. I know it works if it's done for the right indications. And, I'm a believer in it. I'm not doing it myself. I talked to my anesthesiologist about it, I think a couple months ago. And he was like, I mean, why? And I was like, I kind of told him, he was like, I don't know, man. He's like, you got to kind of really convince me. He's like, I'm not saying no, like, we'll figure it out. But I do think there's a future there, but you have to have the right technologies to do that. You got to be doing certain cases pretty quickly, just like like some of the spinology equipment, like where you can do those TLIFs pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the right education. And I think, it's just, again, because I know a lot of reps are going to be listening to this. Like, the thing that you mentioned, Chet, is that some reps I feel are just too slick. And it's just, I don't care what physician you're dealing with, it's just a great way to lose credibility. The best reps that I know that I was mentored by, so some guys who come to mind, Jason Carl, Sean Stewart, Matt Ashari, Robert Reedlove, when we were at Missouri, they never talked like that. When a surgeon said, can we use the robot for this? Even if the answer was yes, they were extremely methodical and intentional about how they answered. And it was very much like peer-to-peer talking about it. And if you see like surgeons, when they talk to each other, it's very rare, like surgeon getting excited. Oh, this is awesome. You should do this. It's very like calm and collected. It's like, yeah, like here's the good side. Here are the indications. Here's this, here's that.
Sure.
And it, a very conservative approach. And I just feel like some of these sales reps are just like run and gun, just slinging it, challenger sales, spin selling. And I'm just like, guys, like you're not doing yourselves any favor, and then you're not doing other reps any favors. Because there's surgeons, so it's great that you had a good experience with reps. There's surgeons I know who dealt with those kind of reps through training, and so any rep that they meet, just immediately they're just extremely skeptical of them.
Yeah, again, I've been extremely fortunate. Like, I don't know. I just think, and I'm also just joking to say I'm a bad judge of character. So a lot of the people I meet, I think are awesome, and who knows?
What and I want to be mindful of your time, because again, we're doing this on a Saturday. You just came back from clinic, so I appreciate that.
Rounding, but yeah.
What currently, like in the world of spine, like what are some things that do excite you that are going on today, and things that you kind of wish would change?
So I think some things that change, it's, again, I hate cliche expressions, but insurance companies on some of the peer-to-peers I have to do when I have to, like the best peer-to-peers are when I started, they sometimes will say, by the way, I'm a neurosurgeon, just to give you some background. And I always, like, I've only had that like 4 or 5 times. Every time I'm just like, fantastic, because it's like usually for an indirect decompression case. And I'm like, man, like this is a neurosurgeon's, like this was y'all's thing. Like, how am I having to defend this to you? And usually when I just kind of get like 2 cents into it, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not sure why this was a peer-to-peer. I'd love to, yeah, it's approved. Here's approval number. Other times they sometimes will, I'm always super nice, kill them with kindness. It's no point in yelling, trying to fight them. It's like, look, you need them so much
This is
more
for
than they
prior
need you.
authorizations, right?
For prior author, like the case, like, oh, we're not approving X, Y, and Z. When they're like, well, like just kind of bear with me. Like I'm pediatrician trained, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this isn't peer to peer. Just because we both graduated med school doesn't mean we're peers.
That's
sure,
exactly
we're
right.
friends with each other, but like I don't have to explain what
no sense.
Is.
It makes no sense. Yeah, it makes no sense at all. It's insane. It's literally insane to me that this happens. Right. And what you're saying is like not far-fetched. Like that, again, spine surgeon and your peer-to-peer is like with somebody who's a pediatrician and not even a few years out of training. Like,
right. So that's kind of one of the, again, it's cliche. Like everyone's gonna say, oh, the insurance companies are the bad guys, but like, man, you Google like what the revenues are, what the profits are. It's like, I don't know, like some of these for-profit insurance companies, again, maybe if I talk too bad and put a flag on my things, like, that seems like a problem to me that these patients, if you think your lifetime, it wouldn't be hard. You can calculate it on Google tonight, like how much you're paying hundreds of thousands into insurance during your lifetime. And like, man, if you want a surgery and your surgeon that you trust, you value, that other people sent you to because they trust the value, says like, I'm extremely confident this surgery is something you need, like, who is some third party? Like, in what world do you get to have some third party be like, sorry, thanks for all your money you've paid us, but like, we're gonna have to do this first. It's like, I don't know, man. Like the surgeon's pretty comfortable, and I've paid for the right to have this surgery.
Yeah, I know, and again, one heuristic that I like is that if you're dealing with a really complicated situation where the consequences are not that bad, but the upside is huge and money's involved, you're going to have like bad behavior. And so like today I remember, and I'm reading it right now, one of the things I was trending on Twitter from the LA Times was this column that says, leaked SoCal hospital records reveal huge automated markups for healthcare. And it's talking about like, in different hospitals, like there's huge markups and everything. And I retweeted that and I said like, anybody who's surprised about this is like the same kind of person who's like surprised by like, oh my God, you mean the government lies to me? Like, yeah, hospitals mark these things up. Are you kidding me? Like, what? This is not news, people. Like, what?
Yeah, I agree. Like, you see, like, what they charge for hospital drapes or like a towel or like a Raytech or things like that, and like, I don't know. I guess I get it because they need to make up costs when they treat underinsured patients like that. So, I don't know. I'm not good authority on that part.
But what about So one of the things that we're seeing more in healthcare, and again, I don't know if you're experiencing this yourself, is that all of data has been showing that qualitatively and quantitatively taking care of patients in the ASC setting, in the outpatient setting, better quality of care, a lot cheaper. I mean, for spine surgeons, like, do you see that as well on your side as well?
Definitely. That's where, all the publications, they come out and say that, again, cliche say that there's many things like neurosurgery, journal neurosurgery, the spine journal. If you just search ASC and outcomes, that's where it is. It is cheaper to do it there. Again, there is some bias to it because if they're a older, sicker patient, you're not going to do it there. And, pound for pound, those patients that are going to have more costs associated with them. So I agree with those biased statements. But that said, like the ASCs are kind of where it's at. The only problem sometimes with ASCs is that it varies by state law in terms of what's outpatient. Is that same day? Is that 6 hours? Is that 23 hours? Some states have that as 2 days. So that's some of the discrepancy. And it should be state run. That's kind of, I live in Texas. We're all about states' rights and, local government's rights, things like that.
Totally.
So I'm not arguing for that necessarily. But in terms of saying like, oh, I do all my things outpatient, and you go on the podium and says that, it's like, well, is that they're going home that day, or are they going home within 23 hours, or are you allowed to keep them for 2 days, but that's still outpatient? So I think there needs to be a little more, not in a malicious way, but just a little more transparency when someone says they're doing outpatient fusions. If you're trying to preach that to educate others, like, tell me what outpatient means legally for you.
That's a good point. I didn't realize that. I did not realize that. And that's a really good point. Chet, I want to be mindful of your time, so we're gonna wrap up. But the sort of the end of the show is that we do a little bit of rapid fire questions. Before we get into the rapid fire question, anything else that you want to touch on or share before we get into rapid fire?
No, man. I'm just proud of you of all you accomplished. I'm so happy you're going to be a dad. I'm glad all your Under Armour shirts from med school are going to fit your child in his first year of life. So that's really exciting. This is super tight. I know Reed Flora, if you ever listen to this, is going to love, and Jared's going to love that statement.
Oh man, That's right.
You look like the evil Spider-Man, we always said, with the skin tight clothes.
That's true. I'll never forget Jonathan. I can't remember his last name. He's like Mr. Stretch, man. He's so tall. But I remember that he dressed up as me for Halloween and had like a really amazing mustache on. I never felt more insulted and flattered at the same time.
People talking about you. That's all we need. Good or bad, just being on their minds. That's
absolutely. Yeah, there we go.
You and I live in.
That is exactly right, man. That is exactly right. All right, so rapid fire questions. You can take as long as you want to answer these questions, but the quicker you answer them, the quicker you get to the next one. And we're going to do just 2 or 3 of these, okay? Start with an easy one. So during 2020, we were all in pandemic lockdown. A lot of us were at home. We fed our happiness through a thing called Amazon Prime. What was the most interesting thing that you bought for under $100 via Amazon Prime? It could be a book, it could be a gadget. What's something you're just like, man, this thing is awesome? Under $100.
I lived in Philadelphia during COVID, and so it was on super lockdown. But the thing that we didn't have moving from Miami, just because when it rains in Miami, it's 20 minutes, and you usually can have a Cortadito during that time, were umbrellas. And so my kid at the time, and still was obsessed with umbrellas. So we had some of the fanciest, coolest, like quad opening umbrellas you've ever seen, because it rained all the time in Philly. It's not always sunny in Philadelphia. Still a great city, but it's not always sunny.
Nice. Now, do you remember the name of the umbrella specifically or no?
I'm not a paid spokesman for them, so I'm not giving them any.
There's such a
No, I don't remember what.
You know what?
It's Amazon. It's probably an Amazon umbrella.
We're gonna help you make a merchandise store for your Instagram handle, and we're gonna come with t-shirts that spine surgeon says like, I'm sorry, I'm not a paid spokesperson for insert company name that I love using their stuff. No, I love that. Okay. Next question is, what book do you feel that you end up gifting or recommending most often to others? You read books, right? Spine surgeons
not really.
Books, right?
Not really. There's a book. Man, I'm not gonna be able to tell you the exact title. I think it's called like Stop Smoking Now. My sister-in-law used to smoke, and she said she read this book and she quit that night. And I was like, okay. And like when I was telling her, like I got 2 patients that kind of didn't know they were smokers, and I didn't know they were smokers. Like get past that part, and they smoked. And now they have like a non-union after a neck surgery. She's like, you should give them this book. And so I did that. And I'm young in practice, you give way too many patients your cell phone number. The patient like texts me, being like, thank you so much for this book. I'm quitting smoking tonight. I'm already through 4 chapters of it. And I was like, wow, this book, I've never smoked, or to need to read this book.
I'm going to look it up.
So yeah, I'll
look it up and leave it in the show notes.
The link. I have it downstairs.
Yeah.
It's called like Stop Smoking Now, but I'm sure there's like 40 books with that exact title. But that's like a book, I ordered 7 of them, and when a patient says like, we need a big surgery, like, oh, I got to quit smoking. I'm like, if they meet the cut enough, I'll be like, I got a book for you. So nice.
All right, a couple more. So the one thing that's, I think, part of any industry, but it's very much deeply embedded in the culture of medicine, is this idea of mentorship and apprenticeship, right?
Okay. Yes.
So over time, and you mentioned one of the great Michael Wing. I'm sorry. Yeah, from Miami too, right? I never met him, but I'm familiar with him from my Mazor days. So mentors inspire us and everything, but at the same time, like, they tell us things that we need to hear. What was the most painful thing? And it doesn't have to be somebody from residency. It could be anything in your life. What was the most painful thing that someone told you that made you change for the better?
Man, I think something that Frank Eismont, he's with our former spine chairman forever, or just chairman of orthopedics at Miami, was my boss. Like, one thing he would harp on me for every now and then was, you got to pay attention to details. It's a cliche expression, but he's right. Like, attention to details. I think everyone gets told that in their field. But that was something that he told me a lot. He's like, it's going to nip you in the butt one day if you're not paying attention to details. And so, like, he's right. Like, sometimes it looks like I'm nitpicking my office staff, or he's like, hey, like, I need that MRI report. They're like, well, isn't it clear here? It's like, no, you gotta, like, what if the MRI report says possible cancer in like the vertebral artery, and like I just overlooked it. So, like, attention to details. Those are the details you gotta look for. You gotta read MRI reports. You gotta read the hospital clearance note, because it might have the one line at the end that says cleared for surgery, but above it says could die, but cleared for surgery. So things like that is attention for details. And something that Dr. Eismont was appropriately pretty hard on me for, but helped me be a better surgeon.
That's a great one. Well, I guess that's why the saying is, the devil's in the details, right? So
Exactly.
all right, so last question for you before we sign off. So I want you to pretend that for the next year, I take out a billboard. This billboard's going to go in front of every single major hospital, ASC, and every spine surgeon is going to see this billboard when they walk into surgery. What message do you put on that billboard and why? Can't be followed Donnally Spine Consult Instagram.
At Donnally Spine Consult TikTok. Yeah, okay, I don't know. Man, I don't know. That's kind of a tough question in terms of what I'd want everyone to know. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something not super cliche and cheesy, like love.
There's nothing wrong with cliche. Like yeah. Why? What's wrong with that? We're going with that. That's the first thing you said.
It's like that. That's like a little serious. I thought we were gonna just have a good old time here. So I don't know.
You can have a good old time too.
If it was something serious, it'd be like I'd say call your parents. How about that? Everyone should call their parents at all times and be talking with them. If I couldn't do something serious, then I'd have it say DonnallySpine.com. Just direct more people to
such a spine surgeon.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes. Look, we'll wrap it up on a light note. So again, the field of spine, there's because there's so much money in it, with hospitals and there's a lot of hardware and technology and stuff. So there's of course a lot of crazy stories about spine surgery back in the 80s and 90s. So you just hear all these crazy stories. And one of the funniest things I've ever heard was, and I won't mention who it is, but there is an older spine surgeon who's probably in his 70s now, maybe 80s, just really, really well-known surgeon. And he said this at a NAS conference, jokingly, when he was looking at, I think a robot or something. He said to a group of residents, he's or not residents, he was in front of a group of residents and there's another spine surgeon who's about the same age. And he looked at this other guy and said, You remember the day back in the day when sex was dangerous and spine surgery was safe? And I thought that was just the best thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah, exactly. Chet, man, what a pleasure to have you on. We're definitely gonna have you back on. I wanna cover some more specific technologies in spine, but this is a great way to kind of kick off. And super proud of you. And glad that we got reunited through the wonders of Instagram and LinkedIn in this day and age.
Exactly, man. I mean, that's how you keep up with people. Unless you're sending out birth announcements and holiday cards once a year, there's a way to kind of stay relevant and stay on people's minds. And if you're think it's stupid, then don't do it, and that's fine. More followers for me.
Totally. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. Check out the notes and the links below. We're leaving a lot of good stuff in there. Donnally Spine Consult on Instagram. Go give it a follow, and I'll leave some other links to Chet's handles. Thanks, all. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Omar.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The State of MedTech. I'm your host, Omar M. Khateeb. Do us a favor, if you like this episode, share with somebody, and go ahead on Apple and Spotify, wherever you are, leave a 5-star review, type a few nice notes about us. This is how we get other people to find the show. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.